Today's session features Rutgers Business School Executive Education faculty member, Christina Kerley, known in the industry simply as CK. CK has been teaching in RBSEE mini MBA programs for 12 years. Over that time, she's taught on many technologies, including mobile, IoT, AI, and the full suite of immersive technologies. In another recent webinar, CK introduced us to the Metaverse, and as promised at that time, she's back covering its counterpart, Web3. In our next mini MBA digital marketing, CK will be teaching a new in-person module called the Future Web, which will cover blockchain, the Metaverse, and Web3. Now, while Web3 is important, it's also very misunderstood. So I personally, and I know our audience is as well, looking forward to the walkthrough. What is Web3, why it's important, and how it's going to drastically change the web. CK, would you take it away from here?
I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for always being my great counterpart on these webinars, and a big shout out to Rutgers for always indulging me when it comes to everything next generation technologies. I was actually doing a speech yesterday and I was talking about how important it is to continue to invent, reinvent, and most important, repeat. Because you know what? Relevance, if there's one thing we've learned through Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, and an explosion of technologies, we have learned that relevance is an ongoing quest, and digital transformation, it is not a destination, it's an ongoing journey. And so I'm really looking forward to delving into Web 3 today. I hope you were able to learn back in May on my Metaversity, get it? Metaverse and University webinar. But if not, that's been recorded and I went through the meta what's, meta whys, meta hows, and meta who's during that time. And now I'm going through the counterpart on Web 3. You know, I am looking forward to helping to define and demystify what is Web 3, because when it comes to Web 3, if you were to ask a group of people, what is Web 3? You would likely get a mixed bag of blank stares, bets on Bitcoin, musings on the Metaverse, and it's really not anyone's fault, because Web 3 isn't just one big thing, it's a lot of big things. And they're going to make big impacts to the web, the way we work, the way we deal with businesses, and it's all very exciting and very much underway throughout this really incredible decade of the 2020s. So what I want to do today is I want to help demystify and define this big question of what is Web 3 for you. I'm going to be going through what it is, why it's so devilishly difficult to define, why it's much more than a number, a modernization. It is a multifaceted movement. It's actually playing out offline as much as it is online, and how it's going to be changing the web and the world. So before we go forward with Web 3, I want to take a step and go back to define Web 1 and Web 2. Now, I'm sure the audience came into the web at different times. Some of you, like me, a real OG when it comes to the web, were, really into it in the mid 90s and of age to be working in it. Well, we remember Web 1. And some will have come in Web 2 in the social web, but I want to give some definitions here. So first and foremost, when we talk about the web, we now need to, because over the past 25 years, it's evolved, and like fashion and technology, like science, it will continue to evolve. There's no end point, right? But in Web 1, it was really the information web. I'll call it the laid back web. You took it in like you take in television because it was information, okay? It was information. It was exciting at the time, but it was really one-way information. We were accessing information, and the killer app was really around email, which is still very exciting, still very much the way business works. But understand, I call it the information web because think of it this way. It was read only. And the power The power was concentrated with publishers. That was around 1994 to 2004. So that was Web 1, or the information web. And I'll be talking about that and hearkening back throughout this presentation. Then we get to Web 2, the exciting time of Web 2 that started around 2004. For some of us that were blogging earlier, it started around 2003, 2002, but it was really the social web. So this is the web we mainly have today, which is a read write web. And instead of leaning back and taking information, we're leaning forward. We're a part of it. There was true interactivity. And here, the power, and I'm going to argue the outsized power, has been held not from publishers, but in platforms. Now, rest assured, we have very much a creator economy, and we have a lot of movement there. But the power right now is held within those major tech platforms, whether it's Meta, whether it's Facebook, heck, in business, whether it's an Uber, an Airbnb, an Etsy. So we've gone from the Web 1 of information, read only, to Web 2, the social web, and going from power from publishers to platform. Now we're starting to see Web 3 take shape. And Web 3 is going to be known as the decentralized web. And the reason being is because we're not going to have all of our data and all of our information centralized into databases behind gatekeepers. It's going to be under more user control. I'm going to go through this more as we go forward to the slides, but understand we are now coming to a time where we've gone from Web 1, an information web, and the power is concentrated with the publishers in the 90s and early 2000s, to the social web, Web 2, and the power being, the outsized power being concentrated with the platforms, right? And we can have a read write web, to Web 3, a decentralized web that is read, write, and this is where it's really important, own and ownership. And I'm going to be talking about that more, but now we can own parts of the web, whether it's cryptocurrencies, whether it's crypto assets like NFT, non-fungible tokens, or parts of organizations where the creators could be owners of the platforms themselves, or the workers, say the Uber drivers, could be owning that platform itself. Maybe it'll be called Nuber for New Uber. Kidding. Anyhow, this started, one could argue it started back in 2010 when blockchain and Bitcoin really hit the mainstream, but it's really starting to gather up now. And this includes blockchains, cryptocurrencies, and we have gone from an information web, power was held with the publishers, to now a social web, power is held in those big tech platforms, to now a decentralized web, which I'll go through more, where the power is coming back to people. And by people, I mean creators, I mean users, I mean customers. Isn't that inspiring? So let's give some more definition around what is Web3. Well, Web3 represents the next iteration of the World Wide Web. It's built upon blockchains and cryptocurrencies, and it's characterized by greater decentralization, decentralizing that data, not centralizing it within only corporate repositories and only behind major platforms. Much more transparency, user controlled, and shared ownership. We're talking about that more in a few slides. Understand that Web3 is going to have some fits and starts. We're going to see some big movement. Then we might take a step back, but this is where the web is going. And we're going to see it at play throughout the 2020s. And just like webs that came before it, it's going to transform how we work, how we live, and our world altogether. Now, why is it called decentralized disruption? Because unlike all data being centralized on one company's servers, it's distributed and encrypted across many servers, and it's under the control of each and every user / customer / creator. Now, what does decentralization mean in practice? Well, instead of spending all our time only on social networks or search engines or tech platforms that own and monetize the data that users create, Web3 organizations use platforms that let users control their own data. Web3 also promises to decrease many barriers, gatekeepers, bureaucracy, and intermediaries that dominate many organizational structures. Does that mean it's going to do away with a lot of companies? Well, all companies are going to face, just like they have up until now, their decentralize or die moment. So understand there's actually a lot more opportunity for companies to decentralize parts of their business model, just like they've digitized it. And if users have their data under their control, it's actually cleaner data. And we will open our data to companies that have our trust. So it's actually a huge proposition for companies. That's not to say the road won't be rocky for many, but it's a really exciting time. And quite frankly, it's progress. So I get the question, well, okay, is Web3 the same as the metaverse? The metaverse is how we will experience a good portion of tomorrow's 3D web, or like I say, going from 3D, 2D websites to 3D worlds. But Web3, those are the technologies and the processes of who will own and control the data and a lot of tomorrow's internet. And again, that explainer on Metaversity is in our archive. So if you were there with me when we went through it, thank you. Could go through it again or refer it to others. It can be a very helpful counterpart. Another thing to understand about Web3, I don't want to say versus the metaverse, but Web3 and the metaverse. Web3 is fast at play. The metaverse is taking shape. There's been a lot of leaps and bounds, but Web3 is already here. The metaverse, we're going to see a lot more of it, especially since it's rumored that big tech platforms are going to come out with more smart glasses and the like. So it's really evolving quickly. So I want to take a moment here and I want to explain trust and data in the centralized web that we have today. If you think about it, doing business online is to trust central entities who know everything about you with your data and your actions. And that's not to say it's nefarious or there's, malevolent intent there. It's just to say this is how it's working today. So think about our data runs on servers that are centralized. For example, we trust Google with our email. And I believe Google has been a good player, but understand just how much is centralized when it comes to our data. If you think about it, data is truly the currency of the 21st century. We trust or don't trust Facebook with our friends. We trust online banks with our money. We trust credit cards with our shopping data. Even with our smartphones, we go through carriers. So everything right now has been very, very centralized. But there's a new kid on the block. There's new technology. There's new code that can make trusting in the web much more viable. Because again, those choices, that data are under the control and ownership of every single user, customer, creator. Here's a big one, and I hope that this is one of the main points you take away from today. Web3 is not just a digital modernization. It's not just the difference of one number from Web 2, the social web, to Web 3, the decentralized web. It's actually a multifaceted movement. I say the reason, or one of the reasons, that Web3 is so hard to understand and pinpoint with definition is because it's actually a lot of big things that are going to change the web and the way we work in a lot of big ways. And understanding it's not just a modernization, it's a multifaceted movement. For my marketers out there, anytime there's a movement, anytime there's a change in consumer or professional sentiment, we need to take real account of that, because that's how we align and adapt our brands and our strategies. So Web3 is not just a modernization. In fact, it is a multifaceted movement. And I'm going to go through 4 key facets of how it's going to change the web, our work, and the way that we interact with digital content in so many ways. So what are the many facets of Web3? I'm going to go through 4. First, new technologies. These new technologies serve 2 key purposes. They improve the web of today, okay? And they expand the number of connected environments. In fact, we talk about the web like it's a stationary thing, like we're just going online. But in fact, the web is now evolving and expanding into many exciting environments. And that gives us new ways to communicate, acquire, and retain customers. The second facet I'm going to go through, emerging economies. Exciting here is we are going from the current attention economy into an ownership economy. Remember what I said a few slides back, we're going from read web, read only, to read write, to read write own web. And then number 3, any movement, any good movement is absolutely powered by and bolstered by changing mindsets and changing ideologies. And I'll tell you this, Web3 is absolutely bolstering a new way of looking at so many things that we now value and or deem unacceptable. You know, I say if you want to understand Gen Z, look to the values and attributes, which I'll go over under number 3, the facet number 3 of changing ideologies. And actually, you'll find that a lot of these values are cross-generational. And number 4, the biggest impact is going to be to the shifting balance of power, because power is going to change hands from publishers to platforms to the people themselves. We're going to want a democratic web that is of the users, by the users, and for the users. Hold on one second, because I have a little froggy in my throat. So let's start with new technologies. So what did I say? With new technologies, they serve 2 key purposes. 1 is to improve the current state of the web, and 2, to expand the web from a singular destination into an absolute collection, a dynamic collection of connected environments. Sometimes when I'm explaining Web3, the best place to start is with problems. Because I got to tell you, the web has a lot of opportunities, but the last 10 years, we've seen so many problems crop up, whether it being a maze of misinformation, whether in social networks, when people feel like they're the product, social media algorithms trapping us into echo chambers. Heck, our privacy is a veritable punchline. The fact that tech platforms, it's okay to have ownership and a portion of control, but it's such an outsized control that so many tech platforms that do improve our lives have absolutely changed into de facto monopolies. There's so much friction. With Web3, you would have one password and you would authenticate it to make sure it's not a bot, and you can go to all the different websites and all the meta worlds. So there's so much friction. The fact that our information is so easily hacked in centralized database. When you decentralize, you up exponentially the amount of security and encryption. Probably the biggest thing that other generations will look to us and just gasp, we create oceans of data, but nary a drop belongs to us. That's about to change. I really like this quote because it helps to sum it up. The need for trust, because trust is needed, the cost of it, and the dependence on so-called middleman to provide trust is one reason why these behemoths, Google, Facebook, Amazon, have turned economies of scale and network effect advantages into de facto monopolies. In many cases, it's through no fault of their own, or they're not trying to overreach. Others, I would argue, are for sure. But these giants have in effect been centralized ledger keepers and their repositories for the digital currency, our digital data of the 21st century. So what's happened is in controlling those records or having ownership over them, it's controlled us. And that's why Web3 is a much more democratic web. Again, companies that adapt, companies that face their decentralize or die moments, just like the companies that have disrupted themselves and innovated throughout the past decades, will do very, very well. And actually, this will increase consumers' trust of the web, activity of the web, and it'll make it much more progressive in the sense it'll make it much more fair. There's a lot of business to be had and a lot of problems to solve. So you've heard the term blockchain. It's not the prettiest name, but you know it's a great distributed ledger technology that really helps through blocks of data chained together through encryption. That's how it got its name. It can help us course correct. It can help us reset the issues of the past, reclaim control of the present, and reshape the web of the future. Now, this is going to be the last really technical slide that I'll go through, but this is the way I want you to think about blockchain, or basically any distributed ledger technology, because there's a few. It's just blockchain has been in the lead. I want you to think about it as a new OS or operating system for the web. And it's going to change how businesses operate and how users, creators, customers will interact with the web, because it hits so many necessary counts, as you can see, I've listed on the left and the right. Because it's distributed across many computers, encrypted, it means it's owned by everyone and no one. Because it can't be tampered with, it's immutable. Because it has high encryption, it's much more private and secure. Put it this way, to get into a centralized database, still hard for people that are hacking and bad actors, as we call them. But when we look at a distributed and highly encrypted technologies, it's not robbing one house. It's having to rob millions of houses simultaneously and cracking all that code. So it's really, really an exponential difference from centralized data and centralized repositories. And it's transparent. There's a trust, but it's code. So it's keeping customer and company both honest. It's interoperable. So these technologies play well together, which is really important. If we didn't have hypertext for the web, we wouldn't be able to have the web we have today. And we call it trustless and permissionless. And that just means there's no gatekeeping and you're not given permission to be part of different platforms. So just understand, because this is where I want to leave a lot of the technology behind and go to the implications and the trends, that it's a new operating system for the web. And I guess you could say it's the MVP of Web3. So along with technologies that are going to improve the current state of the web, course correct or reset the web, Web3 technologies also expand the internet from a singular destination into a dynamic collection of connected environments. And this is what I mean. We're really the last generation to be talking about, I went online or I went to the internet, when actually it's going to flow through everything, highly encrypted, all of that, but it's going to go from a singular destination, the classic internet, into what we already have through IoT, short for Internet of Things, that makes for a real world physical, what I like to call Outernets. And that means everything is connected, smart, data producing. So the web is part of our environment. Look at the mobile web that we have into where we're going with the decentralized Web3. Really exciting is going from a 2D web to a 3D world, the metaverse, that behaves more like our physical world because it's 3D, to a full suite of immersive media, whether it's augmented reality, which you've caught Pokemon through, holography, that means things don't have to be screens, they can be displays. You aren't just playing Minecraft on your mobile phone or in VR, but in your living room. And actually, the point I want to get across here is that everything and everywhere becomes a canvas for we marketers and business professionals to improve those communications with our customers, our target audiences. So I talked about 4 key facets. The first, new technologies, and we just went through that. But another key facet is that emerging economies are taking shape. Right now, the way that we have the web set up, it's more of an attention economy. It's how long can I have your attention on a certain platform and be able to monetize the data we've amassed, but you're not really owning any of those assets. Big key here is that through a number of means, we're going to go from an attention economy into an ownership economy. So think of it this way: new technologies, new capabilities, new currencies are moving us from an attention economy into Web3's ownership economy. So what can you own? Well, let's think of it this way. Ownership actually drives opportunities, just like in the real world, sorry. The more that we can own things and assets, the more that it enables wealth creation for many, many more people, startups, and organizations. And it provides incentives. Heck, we can now own digital currencies. Again, we think of Bitcoin because that's in the lead, but there's other digital currencies or cryptocurrencies like Ether, Sand, and the like. And understand the way to look at it. It doesn't actually replace offline currencies, whether it's the US dollar or the euro, but finally, our World Wide Web gets a global worldwide currency. So we can own currencies. We can also own digital assets like NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which could be fragments of digital culture. They could be art. They could be digital items. Maybe when I'm buying my Nike shoes offline, my avatar gets shoes online. So it's digital, physical and digital, and all sorts of creative assets. Understand how important this is, especially to artists and business owners, that they can show attribution and ownership and receive payment and credit for their work. So again, ownership enables a much more fair playing field, wealth creation, and honestly, as of yet, unimagined opportunities. You know, of all these technologies for the last 25 years have really been a boon to different ways to work and live. Web3 is going to give us a new social structure and collaboration that is the worldwide. Finally, our own data. You know, it's amazing. We can own and control the data that we create. And by doing that, we'll actually create 360-degree views of customer profiles instead of having a little data here, a little data there. And we'll open it up to companies that we trust for the time that we trust. It actually will it'll ignite millions of new startups. So a lot of companies that feel, oof, I didn't get that data, I wasn't able to track that data or capture that data or combine and analyze that data in Web 1 and Web 2, darn, no worries. We have Web 3, and it will make companies more accountable, more trustworthy, and consumer confidence will skyrocket because data will be owned by those who created it. Can you imagine 25, 30 years and they look back and they'll be like, Mom, Dad, you didn't own your own data? Did you own your own money? Even organizations that right now, whether on TikTok or Instagram, it's more like we rent space, but we don't actually have an ownership in those platforms that we spend so many hours creating. We want to have that relationship with those customers and more of control of how it's promoted. So even organizations are going to be structured because of these new technologies, this new code, where the folks that are working on these items, whether it's a type of TikTok or a new type of, say, Uber or Airbnb, have more say in where all that content goes, how to promote, how to be compensated for it. So it's actually a really exciting time because we're going from an attention economy into an ownership economy. And all these ways, currencies, assets, user data, and organizational structures. You know, I said that any good movement, because Web3 is a movement, it's not just a modernization. Any good movement is powered by changing mindsets, changing values, what we value and find acceptable, and what we no longer find tolerable. So understand, like any good marketer, like any good business, follow the expectations, follow the aspirations, get rid of the friction and the aggravations. And you want to understand the changing ideologies. And Web3 isn't just giving rise to a new technology. Nope, but an entirely new ideology. And I got to tell you, I am not a WebZ, I'm a proud Gen X, but I am here for these values because Web3 may be built upon technologies, new currencies, and crypto assets, but it is powered by entirely new principles, philosophies, and ideologies. So let me give you some examples. We are frustrated with the state of Web 2 because we want more data freedom, not data feudalism. Also, we want open, interoperable systems. We want decentralized technologies. Why? To solve all those problems I talked about under facet 1 with new technologies and the problems and course correcting the web. We want more transparency. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. We want more transparency and less gatekeeping. Again, this can only make businesses bloom better, improve revenues, level a lot more playing fields, increase consumer confidence, and give rise to entirely new businesses, whether those new businesses or new business streams with existing businesses or entirely new startups and ways of working. And we want a web that is of the users, by the users, and for the users. Because right now it feels less democratic and more like less like a democracy and more like an oligarchy. One of the best lines I've ever heard, and I got to tell you, I agree, 25 years in, and this World Wide Web, we're sick of it being owned by 4 white guys. What we want is more ownership all around, because that is where we need to go with this progress. So while enabled on the internet, because of code, because of technology, and there's a lesson in that actually, sometimes it doesn't take regulation. It doesn't take campaigns saying, users, change your behaviors. Companies, be better actors to the users and the creators and the customers. Sometimes it takes an innovation like these new technologies. And understand that while enabled on the internet, Web3 is not isolated to online. Look all around you because Web3 is playing out offline. How? Let me give you some examples. Web3 movement is absolutely reflecting our changing views and values. We want more diversity, inclusivity. I love the expression, diversity is organic. Inclusivity, that is intentional. Representation matters. Equity, we have labor movements going around that are truly historic right now. And transparency, it's not just on the web, it's off the web. The greatest example I have is in the last 24 months, Mark Cuban, who owns in Shark Tank and owns a lot of ventures, has actually said it's not the basketball team that he owns wants to be his legacy for his children. It's now Cost Plus Drugs, costplusdrugs.com, a new initiative that enables people to get the quality of life and life-saving medications they need. He has made it absolutely transparent. And if you go to costplusdrugs.com, he has a list of what all generic drug prices cost. He adds 15% shipping and handling, that's it. And it brings down the cost of drugs by 90%. I'm on just basic medications for antihistamines and like generic Lipitor. And I can tell you, I have gone at least 95% decreased in my medicine and my annual cost. So transparency, inclusivity, equity is playing out offline as it is, as much as it is online. The future of work, I keep telling everyone, what you're missing about the future of work, it's the future of workers, whether it's the great resignation, the great reshuffle, quiet quitting. We don't just want a paycheck. We want a purpose. And we want to be treated with more respect. We want to be heard more. Those companies that are doing a great job of it, reskilling their employees, really listening, they've got employees for life. But those companies that are not hearing that, 7 out of 10 companies right now are understaffed, and that's only going to get greater and greater as we start to hit 2030 with a massive shortage of workers. The more that you reskill, big competitive advantage. It is a buyer's market. It's an employee's market. More tolerance, more accountability. I love, love, love what both Lizzo and Beyonce have done in the last 3 months. They have listened to the fact that some of their lyrics around the word spaz is actually ableist language, and they didn't know that. But once they found out, they said, I hear you. In fact, Lizzo said, being an overweight Black woman, I overstand, not understand the need for representation and for hearing you out. And they've changed their lyrics. Understand Web3 is playing out offline as much as it is online. Look at the questions and the discussions we're having around relatability and authenticity. I see a lot of this on TikTok saying, well, Instagram needs to be more relatable like TikTok is. But what we're seeing is we want more equity, inclusivity, authenticity, and transparency. And that is as evident in Web3 technologies as it is offline as well. Shifting power. We're going to close on shifting power because the biggest, the greatest, the most massive impact that is going to be felt and is going to be the legacy of Web3 is the shifts in power. We've gone from publishers. Heck, in Web 1, publishers were like, how are we going to fill up this huge web with enough information and content? The answer was Web 2. It's going to be from the users themselves. So we've gone from power from publishers to platforms. Now Web 3 is going to bring power back due to new technologies, emerging economies, changing ideologies. It's now going to bring power back to people. Isn't that the way it should be? So it's going to get much more balanced. So here, I really hit on the fact that it's okay for companies to be powerful. It's the outsized power that we're having trouble with. Actually, a lot of writers would say it's like the age of Teddy Roosevelt and the robber barons, where there was too much power with monopolies. And that's the reason his face is on Mount Rushmore, because he did so much to course correct that. So I guess history can repeat itself online like offline. So we're not looking for monopolies, more like partners. And we really want to have more say in ownership, creators having control, people over platforms, and nothing becoming a monopoly, even if it's unintended. So Web3's biggest impact, I promise you this, we will see this happening throughout this decade, and definitely when we look back on it. Web3's biggest impact will be to power. Who will keep it? Who will reclaim it, and how it's amassed in the future. This is so important for every single division, department, profession, and person to understand. So Web3's biggest impact will be to power, because these intermediaries, these gatekeepers, they need to change. Heck, traditional companies like traditional banks are saying that blockchains are actually helping them reduce friction, improve trust, and to do like settlement of monies in a much faster way. So we're already seeing a lot of traditional players start to adapt. It'll be a rocky road and we're in for a revolution, but we're already seeing some great success stories. So what I say is, any way that we can build bridges, not walls, opportunities, not obstacles. When it comes to creators, they're not looking for platforms. They're looking for ecosystems and those kinds of tools. They're not looking to build audiences, but community. So it's really focusing through that lens. And there's entirely new exciting sectors. I'm pretty sure you've heard of DeFi, decentralized finance, with all these new digital currencies. But what I'm stoked about is DeSci, decentralized science. Science is the quest for ongoing truth and exploratory knowledge. But what it reviews so heavily, what it relies on so heavily, is collaboration and peer reviews. When you open up access to accurate data through blockchains, you're able to decrease the amount of redundancy that's happening with different groups, so you can increase the amount of innovation and experimentation, and you bring collaboration into the mix. We did a lot of collaboration just in the last 2.5 years in the scientific field and research and looking for treatments and vaccines for COVID. We were helped by these types of systems. So exciting new sectors that will only benefit from collaboration. I actually did a speech at Nestle yesterday, and I was talking about reskilling. I was talking about information, but I was saying that's only half the equation. The other half is how well we train and collaborate. In fact, scientifically speaking, we always see humans as the apex species because we've got bigger, more capable brains. Actually, the most powerful force in all of human history, human cooperation. That's collaboration. The reason we went from hunter and gatherers to agricultural economies, to industrial, to digital economies, is because we came together and collaborated. Actually, the reason why there's so many innovations that happen from cities, you have so much brain power concentrated. Now we have the biggest city of all. It's called the internet. So now we can better collaborate. And when things like the metaverse happen, even better, because we'll be able to use AI for instant translation, hence bringing a truly worldwide web together to collaborate, communicate. You know what? We always talk about, oh, the traditional companies are going to get disrupted. I'll tell you who's really going to come to new types of reckonings and have to really face their decentralize or die moments is the new disruptors, because they need to look at, they've aggregated a lot of talent, and aggregated a lot of content, but now the ownership, just by virtue of how we structure companies in the future, all those values from changing ideologies come into play here. Again, a lot of money to be made, a lot of ideas yet to be imagined, a lot of opportunity, but we must change with the changing times. The ways to win in Web3, I'll stop here and then I'll take some of your questions, is new technologies. Understand and adapt and build a presence across all of these connected environments. Remember what I said, the world itself everywhere is now a canvas for communications, and our customers will expect us to be there. Emerging economies, business models that align with this newfound ownership economy that we're stepping into. And changing ideologies, understanding our markets, their values, their needs, their wants, what they find valuable, what they no longer find tolerable. And the shift in power, understanding and aligning with new models that better work with these systems, that remove those obstacles and place more power with people. It will only increase your relevance, which is always an ongoing quest for relevance, like I said at the top of the presentation, and your revenues and your chances for success. So I hope we have learned from this that Web3 is not just a number. It's not just one modernization. It's actually a multifaceted movement. And it's a lot of big things that are going to change the web, from information web of read only to social web of read write to an ownership web that's decentralized of read, write, and own. Oh my gracious, that's 45 minutes gone by so quickly. I am so hoping you have some questions for me. If not, I can give you some tips, but I just really hope that you've enjoyed and benefited from this defining and demystifying Web3. So I'm going to call back my partner, Margaret, and see if we have any questions to go through.
We do. CK, thank you for an amazing presentation, and you did generate a number of questions from our audience. So let me get started with
Yes, ma'am.
the question of which companies are already operating in the Web3 space?
Oh, sure. Okay, so there are some traditional companies that are putting their toes into the water, like a Chase Bank. Okay, so they may not be doing a lot, say, with Bitcoin, but they might have their own digital currency that's called stablecoin because it works with the value of the US dollar, but they're actually starting processes on blockchains. IBM has been hitting it hard with blockchains. Heck, the Food and Drug Administration. I've actually been so proud of so many governmental efforts. I've been talking to them. They're like, CK, it's less expensive, it's hacker proof, and actually I can resolve problems that used to take me 7 days to find ownership and authority and accurate data down to a matter of minutes. So some governments have been doing really well. You'll see several in the tech space that are starting to build out because they don't want to lose their prominence and their leadership. So Google has some things coming out from Web3, but that won't be until Q4 or Q1. But I love what Twitter's co-founder Jack Dorsey is doing. He calls it Web5. If that wasn't confusing enough, because he says, I want to take the best parts of Web2 plus Web3 and make it even more secure for Web5. So he announced that effort 90 days ago. Be on the lookout there for much more to come. I would say Q1 or Q2 of 2023. So you're seeing some traditional companies, you're seeing a lot of governmental efforts, and then you're seeing the users themselves, like scientists, say, this is a better way to be able to bring user and peer reviews in to get to innovate and better research. So there's efforts there. So it's really across many sectors.
Fantastic. I think that's amazing what you were saying, especially about the early adoption by government agencies. They're often the late adopters.
They're saving money. I know. And I'll tell you what else. In the metaverse too, what I went through, I am so amazed. Seoul, Korea, and Barbados are like, our embassies will be open. Government is ready to take your questions, reduce friction, save some money as of Q1. And they're all building it on Decentraland. So it's really exciting to see that governments are moving first, because when do we ever give the government any love? So we did here in Web3 and back in Metaverse.
Nice, very nice. We had two questions that were asking about the impact on specific fields and industries. So
Yes.
one was about the impact on especially workers in software engineering, and the other was about the impact on finance and working with sensitive financial data.
Okay, I'm going to go overarching for this for software. I mean, for any technical abilities and professions, you're just as long as you continue to learn about these new technologies, wowza meowza, you just improved your relevance and your competitive advantage. So what I say is keep going. And that's coming from someone 25 years in this profession, and I keep going. The second, the question on impact to industries. Can you repeat that for me again, that part of the question?
Sure. People were asking about software engineering as well as finance.
Well, finance is actually really interesting because there's going to be more opportunity, both for traditional players that will need to align with these new systems and these new technologies to, one, stay relevant, and two, get new customers. But three, these technologies, so many of them, the big, not so secret is that they're more secure. I spoke to, my gracious, 4 years ago to 500 chiefs of police, and so many of their systems were using blockchains for chain of evidence. Because what it is, a blockchain is access to accurate data that can be public, permissioned, or private. But because it's distributed and encrypted so well, it's actually financial, any kind of user data, it's actually going to improve exponentially. What we have been doing until now is producing what's called honeypots of data for bad actors that are really, really smart at hacking, because they only have to rob the one house. Still secure, but they only have to rob the one house. To access blockchains, it's like having to rob 1 million houses at the same time with different code. And much of the news around that and any kind of hacking that has been much fewer than centralized databases has been at the wallet level. It actually hasn't been at the truly decentralized level. So it's actually good for data. And we are finding out problems, whether it's the blockchain or the metaverse, and we're actually correcting them at record speeds. We're correcting these failures within a business quarter or less. So it's positive. The hard part for companies is going to be like, oh, I fear giving up control. But hey, just like under monarch control, doesn't democracy work better? There are some things to be improved there too, but you get my point.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's actually though a place I think the government will have to come back in because there's so much regulatory around some of these industries and
Oh, sure.
adjust adjust that. But very interesting.
One note here, because it's really important for everyone to understand. It's not going to be too long. It's going to be a matter of years, folks, where the consumers come back and say, they let me control my data. They let me own. So remember, you have your data is like your 21st century dollar, but you also have a really big bargaining chip because you could go through a competitor. You know what I'm saying? It's like one and the others have to turn around. Yeah.
All right. So next question for you is,
Yes, ma'am.
and you have to picture my air quotes, will the freemium model of Web 2 change?
Ooh. Oh, I love this. Um, it'll evolve for sure. The beauty of Web3 is that it enables an ownership layer to the web, right? That's monetization right there. And two, it enables an identity layer. That's why we have so many bots, and anonymous account, all of that. I'm not saying all your data is open for everyone to see, not at all, but it has to be authenticated through you. So the freemium model would need to change, but what's fascinating is the new incentive models. They say that the reason Bitcoin works so well, and yeah, it goes up and down in value and like anything new. But the reason it works so well is because it's built on a blockchain. That's the biggest blockchain of all, that enables every user to agree on the contents of the database without any of the users owning that database. And third, it gives a whole new incentive to build out the Bitcoin network because there's miners at work. Oh, by the way, problem with Bitcoin has been it's energy intensive. Ethereum just went through what's called the merge, not to be confused with the movie The Purge, not at all. And they have now decreased the amount of energy that's necessary to create more currency by 99%. Are there problems? Absolutely. But within 10 years of there being that digital currency, we've already figured out a whole new model that is remediating major problems. So this freemium model will evolve, but there'll be so many more opportunities just because of the way it's structured and structured with the user in mind.
Amazing.
I
Awesome.
know, that's exciting stuff. Once you understand it, because it's so dang complicated, yeah, it's actually really heartening, I find. Yeah.
Now, from your description
Yes, ma'am.
in your presentation, it sounded like there's some maybe ambiguity is the right word between a kind of a business user and an individual user. But I think that this question, we've talked a little bit
Yes.
about businesses that have, dipped their toe in. I think this person is asking, how do we as individuals get started using Web3?
Great question. First thing I want you to do is I want you to be learning more and more about Web3 and seeing what kind of browsers might be on the market, what type of companies you might be interested in. And that's as easy to do as doing web searches on Web3. Or what I love to do is what I call hashtag research. I find a lot of my buddies and a lot of my news because I go on to Twitter and use it as business media, not social media, use it as that as well. And I will do a search on hashtag Web3 and I find out at least once a week, I find out the major headlines. I find out about new players. I find out about traditional companies that are starting Web3 initiatives. So if you start following the news, there's a lot of great podcasts on Web3 as well. You can find out more about different offerings and new offerings that you might want to start with. Maybe you want to buy a percentage of Bitcoin, just a little bit, play around with that. Maybe you want to look into NFTs, or maybe you want to poke around the metaverse more, but start by researching and finding some great news and developments on it. That's what I found. Yeah, because this idea, whether it's called Web3, whether it's called Web5, this idea of more ownership, this idea of more power with the people, whether those people are business people or business users or their consumer users, this is not going away. This is the way the World Wide Web is going. Over to you.
Oh, fantastic. So next question is about known security concerns. We've
Mhm.
talked about that it is safer, but are there known security concerns?
Yes, there are. I'll tell you. One thing is very talented hackers that we want working on the good side are getting really creative with different security, like they'll call them 51% attacks, which I don't want to go into a lot here because it takes so long to explain, but we are absolutely finding vulnerabilities. Nothing, nowhere near nothing like with centralized databases, but we're finding schemes and we're finding points of failure or loopholes, and we are publicizing them. You'll see them all over the news, and we're starting to remediate them. So will there be problems? Absolutely. The question is, when will the remediations come in, right? How will we collaborate for those, right? And how quickly so? Because if not, the space is then going to have like a lot of problems around it. But I think I liken it this way. We've heard about problems with robots for sure. And yet, with self-driving cars, we're not ready yet. And we've heard some bad fatalities and the like. And yet every single year worldwide, we lose nearly 1 million people to driving accidents in regular cars. So we need to kind of balance that and say, we need a new way. We don't want to have problems with it, but we need to be able to detect those problems early, often, get the brain width together to remediate those problems and to continue to improve, because it's never finished. It's like technology is like fashion or science, never finished. It's ongoing quest.
Constant evolution, right?
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah,
Um,
constant reinvention.
All right, so I think we're going to exceed our time if we answer all the rest of the questions. I'm going to give you one more, and then
Okay.
CK, can we maybe stay on, and I'll still pose these to you for maybe 2 or 3 more minutes
Love to.
after? Okay, all right,
Perfect.
great. So I'm going to read this to you verbatim because I don't want to
Yes, ma'am.
have any, I don't want to try to interpret anything here. What do
Cool.
you think are the biggest benefits in terms of competitive advantage for
Yes.
Web3 brands to move offline to explore physical spaces?
Okay. One, I think that per my the notion I went through with number one about the web is expanding from a single environment into a collection of environments. I think we're going to have to. I think the benefit is that we want digital in our physical world. We want the capabilities to reduce friction, to make life and work better, faster, easier. So right there, that's an ingenious move. And third, yes, there is a risk to going first, but you know what? All the big brands we talk about from Web 1 and Web 2, they went first, but they continued to reinvent. Heck, Netflix is under fire right now for getting too comfortable. Netflix is a young company, but it got too comfortable for a few years. So going to the physical world is a huge benefit because we're going to expect digital capabilities in our physical world. And it's a leapfrog advantage. Now you're playing chess, not checkers, for the cliche. So I think there's a huge advantage to going first, learning, remediating, reinventing, that quest for relevance. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. For the people that have to go to be respectful of their hour-long lunch or break, I just want to make a closing remark, and then if CK, if you don't mind staying, we'll take those 2
Happy
remaining
to.
questions.
Happy
Okay.
to.
All right. So thank you to everyone who participated today. We appreciate your participation in the chat and the Q&A, and you can see how robust Q&A in particular was today. Wanted to remind everyone that our RBS webinars have moved, and you should now watch for our webinars to take place on Fridays at noon Eastern. For more information, you can always visit our webpage that will be emailed to all registrants, and we'll put up a slide that shows that location as well.
There
We
you
have
go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. We have an exciting schedule of topics and presenters lined up, and we want to continue to accept suggestions from our audience. So our this little survey will come up. It's very brief, 3 questions, and you can type in information there, and that will pop up as you
Perfect.
close out. And some folks I know have had to close out already, but link to the archived recording. That was an early question that I had gotten as well. Link to the archived recording of this presentation will be shared via social media and emailed to you. And it'll also appear on the Business Insights page of our website, along with the recordings of our previous virtual lunch and learns. So for anyone who has to go, thank you so much. We've enjoyed having you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And CK, I can give you those 2 additional questions that we received. So
Absolutely. I'll go back to question slide.
all
Here
right,
we
thank
go.
you.
Keep them coming.
All
Thank
right.
you to everyone, and big thanks to Margaret. Stay on if you want to hear some more Q&A. If not, it'll be part of the archive that Margaret always gets together for us in around a week, week and a half. So Margaret, you have the floor again.
Okay, thank you. So for a philanthropic organization, what steps should they consider to move to Web3?
Mhm. So actually, for any kind of organization, we need to find out what streams of business that are existing now or that you're looking to start in the future, what would best be powered by a blockchain? Okay, what would best be powered if you have different partners, different sponsors, different audiences that need access to data from all over the world? And certain audiences will get certain amount of access. You're not opening up everything for the world to see, but how could it run better? Perhaps maybe you want to start something really collaborative with your audience that will just bring in great ideas, great new ways to grow, or grow your community itself through your own company, your own organization. Sure, you can align that with different social media platforms, but maybe you want to make something that's actually going to grow, that I don't want to say is more under your control, though it will be, but it's more, say, on your own turf, or a turf that you've created. I think that could be really interesting there. Especially, we find there's so many darn good ideas that come from everywhere. Plus, you can build that community, because philanthropies, those organizations, they need those really passionate users and partners. So look at what could be good for that. Also look at, really look at what points of friction exist, and how could these technologies either A, reduce that friction, B, streamline some of the processes, or C, with all those connected environments, maybe you're one of the first philanthropy to get to that target audience and move before others, because there's only so much money and only so much time for each and every philanthropy. But what if you moved first? That could be interesting. I love that question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
All
love
right, and
philanthropy.
I think this will be a strong finish for us. How will Web3 impact digital marketing?
Ooh, it's going to, well, first, we are getting ready for a major creator rebellion, and I'm here for it. Heck, YouTube just came out yesterday, let's say in the last week, and said, not only are we giving more to our valued creators, so YouTube is an asset, a company that's owned by Alphabet, Google's parent company, right? So look at the change of the times. But they're saying, now we're not just going to give you part of the revenues brought in from your content, but also part of the revenues from the advertisers that are the front, middle, or end of your content. So they're opening that up and saying, we need to give creators more value and more money. So digital marketing, what's going to be interesting is seeing how these YouTubes versus TikToks, how they play out, and then see how these companies or all new players are going to evolve. Many times it's not existing companies. Many times it is. Many times it's all new. We didn't talk about TikTok 4 years ago, right? We talked about longer form video, or heck, we talked about perfect Instagram pictures, which are great. But I can tell you, I'm much more of a relatable, quick video than a perfect Instagram picture. So you're going to have, that's going to affect digital marketing. Also, think about NFTs. What if you have a physical world item that you want to make digital for avatars? Maybe it's going to reduce friction while getting your name out there. Heck, in the metaverse, I say, you know what? The future awaits you, but it's not waiting on you. You can either start to create the world that you want for your audiences and your current customers to use, or you might be building out on a world that competitors have made. You see what I'm saying? So I would say pretty much every aspect of digital marketing will be impacted to varying degrees, sort of like, kind of like, exactly like it was impacted from Web 1 to Web 2. So seriously, one, stay tuned. Get in the know more and more on Web3, because this isn't going away, as we've seen. It's a movement. And start to look at different opportunities that you already have. Maybe a physical item becomes a digital NFT. Maybe you make more space where your current events are both offline, which are B2B, as well as can be online, but in the metaverse. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you need to start a community for creators, who knows, through blockchains. It's just going to be a lot of experimentation, but every part of digital marketing will be impacted. That's why we're starting. I know this sounds like an advertisement, but it's true. That's why we're starting a module where I've gone from mobile and AI and IoT. I'm now going through the future web and talking about blockchains, talking about Web3, talking about Metaverse, because it does have so many marketing implications, just like it has huge implications for supply chain, finance, legal. These are big questions, folks. I'm sorry. These are big. I love that. I love that about tech. Yeah.
That it had my head swirling on the thought of all the things to come, but in a very good way. So I want to thank our audience for sticking with us, and for being with us for today. I have to tell you, a comment just came in that CK equals legend.
Okay. The check is in your crypto wallet. And thank you, but I got to tell you, it is so true. Invent, period, reinvent, period, repeat. If it's so stunning for me, and a little bit humbling too, because I was there at Web 1 and saying, there's a there. People are like, you should just keep your traditional job. Anyhow, they were wrong. But for my continuing to say, I need to spend time reskilling and relearning. And then that's why I got the job at Rutgers. And they were like, we want you to teach. I'm like, on what? They're like, on all the stuff that you teach. I'm like, oh, right. But it was just part of me. For me to be able to start to delve into more technologies with that support, but to feel so good about these technologies, where they're going. Because let me tell you, the last 5 to 10 years, there've been a lot of problems and a lot of bad processes by some big acting companies. Now we have a way where we're finally going to have a web that belongs to us, and there's major opportunity for it. So all this stuff is legend. So it's really, really exciting. Is it overwhelming? Heck yeah, but it's more exciting. We're breathing rare air.
Very, very exciting.
Yes.
Strong,
thank you so much.
Closing. Thank you so much, CK. And again, thank you to our audience, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care, everyone.